I'm Dustin Bond, and I'm here today to talk to you about Gore Mountain. First, I'll go over some of the statistics, high-level stuff. Gore Mountain ski area is over 4 mountains. They have 4 mountains that make up Gore ski area. They have about 2,500 vertical feet, and this vertical feet is very spread out over the 4 mountains. I would say that you're not going to ski probably the entire vert in one run. Most likely you're probably going to be sessioning about 1,700 to 900 vertical feet per run if you're doing one lift at a time. It's a big mountain. They have 110 trails, 28 glades, and 8 parks. The longest run is 4.4 miles, but that's going to be kind of that long traversing run from the summit to the very base at the North Creek Ski Bowl, which is one of the mountains at Gore. They have 10% beginner, 50% intermediate, and 40% expert terrain. So the lifts at Gore Mountain are generally pretty good, although they're not top tier. So they have an 8-passenger gondola, which goes from the bottom of the base to the top of Bear Mountain. This is kind of where most of the people are going to be throughout the day, especially on holiday weekends and stuff like that. There's a lot of blue cruisers off this gondola, and it's nice to have a gondola that goes about 1,700 feet vertically, and it's a long run, and most people will be happy with it. They also have 2 high-speed quads, one of which is the Adirondack Express 2, which also services most of Bear Mountain, goes just a little bit lower than the gondola. Also, they have Burnt Ridge quad, a high-speed quad, which services all of Burnt Ridge, which is kind of the center mountain at Gore. This lift is one of the nicest there, and it services about 1,500 vertical feet of black diamonds, and there's a lot of glades over there. It's a good time. Also, they have 2 fixed grip quads, one of which services the summit, which is one of my favorite lifts there. It services some of the steepest terrain at Gore, and one of the steepest trails in the east, according to some, though I have my doubts about that. Also, they have the North Quad, which services some blue and green kind of easier but still fun terrain over on Bear Mountain. They also have 3 triples, one of which is the Top Ridge, which services some pretty fun, although limited, black and blue terrain over on Bear Mountain, Top Ridge area. And the other 2 triples are over at the ski bowl. One, the Hudson, goes to the top of the ski bowl, services some double black diamond terrain, as well as a couple glades and one or 2 blues. And the other triple is more of a bunny slope at the base of the ski bowl, which also services the only night skiing at Gore. There's also 2 doubles, one of which is a high peaks chair, which services some of my favorite terrain, diamond, double black diamond skiing, as well as a couple of blues and a lot of glades. I really enjoy some of the cliff runs off this chair, and it's very old school, and the snow over there is always very fresh. There's also 4 surface lifts, which tend to be toward the base of the mountain, one which services a beginner train park, which some people are going to be interested in, and it's a good place to work out some new tricks. Snowfall at Gore is about 150 inches, which is not the most and not the least of comparable mountains. It's a good amount. They do get some good dumps, but it's not going to be the same as somewhere in northern Vermont. Their snowmaking supplements this to varying effectiveness, let's say, but when it's good, it's amazing. And they usually get 4 or 5 1-foot plus dumps that make skiing there amazing for the next few days. So I'm going to talk about my experience with Gore Mountain a little bit. I've been a season pass holder there 3 years, and last year I had the max pass and I skied at Gore 4 days because it was on that pass. So I've skied a lot here, and I still not get tired of it, and probably in excess of 50 days at this point. There's always something new to explore, and I've had pretty good experiences. Okay, so this video is largely probably going to be about the pros of Gore Mountain. As I said, I'm a pretty big fan. So first I'll go through like the pros of what I like about it. It's close to where I live right now, which is right around New York City. And before the past couple years, I've been up in Albany, living up there. So it's been probably the closest big mountain with any kind of like steeps and decent snow in the area. So if you live anywhere around New York City or Hudson Valley or even Jersey, it's gonna be probably your best bet for the distance that you're gonna have to drive. Number two is its size and variety. This mountain is huge, like I said, over 400 acres, 4 mountains. There's a lot of variety. You can ski this place for a week and probably not get bored if it's all open, because there's so much to explore, so many glades, so many lifts, and it's just a ton of terrain. And there's something for everyone. There's green groomers that are fun. There's blue cruisers. There's tons of glades, tons of steeps. I've been skiing here for about 4 years. I've done a lot of days there, and I still go back and sometimes find a little trail through the woods that I've never been on before, or something like that. Also, it's these days has a pretty good price. I think a full price adult ticket is about $80, and you can do a lot better than that on Liftopia or with some of their frequent skier cards, especially with the season pass. I think I got one, the 20-year-old pass for Ski 3, Gore, Bel Air, and Whiteface. It's only like $500. Bought it early, so you can't really beat the price, especially for the size and scope of it. Okay, now I'm going to talk about the cons or the downsides of Gore Mountain. Although this probably won't be an exhaustive list, I'll go through the ones that come to mind. First off is the traverses. These can be tough, especially if you're a snowboarder. Getting from the main mountain to Burnt Ridge, getting from Burnt Ridge to the ski bowl, getting from the summit lift to high peaks. There's a lot of flat parts, and especially coming off Ruby Run from the main gondola, a lot of people get stuck in those areas, and it's flat. You gotta push yourself out. I'm a skier and I don't mind it so much, but a lot of people complain about it. Also, it's in a town called North Creek. You probably never heard of it. There's a good reason for that. There's not a whole lot going on there. Your best bet's probably like an Airbnb if you want to stay up there. There's like 1 or 2 good restaurants that I've been to, but usually this town is all about the skiing, at least for me. I'm sure people will disagree, but that's the experience I've had at North Creek. It's definitely not a Stowe level of luxury, or even like a Killington level of like infrastructure and bars and stuff. And that's honestly not too much of a con for me, because I kind of like to avoid most of that stuff, but it would be nice to have like 1 or 2 main hotels, or even a couple decent restaurants bottom. The base area closes at 5:30 every day, so you better be out of there right after skiing or you're stuck. Also, it's not quite in that like top tier range of ski areas, so if you live in northern Vermont or Maine, I'm not going to tell you to drive 5 hours down to this place, because there's better like big mountain skiing on the East Coast, if you could call it that. It's not the Smuggler's Notch, the J Peak levels of powder or difficulty. It's not even Sugar Low for Whiteface, for example, but it can hold its own, and especially for where it's at, I think it's probably the best you can get. If you're south of Gore Mountain toward the west side, you're going to be really happy with it. And the last con I would say is the snowmaking. Even though they just increased their snowmaking by 40% or something like that this year, it still seems like they get their full mountain open somewhere in January before all the peaks are open, and it's just they leave big chunks of ice on the sides of the trails and stuff. But they don't do a terrible job, but they're probably making snow on like 4 trails at a time, and it just seems like it just takes a while for the mountain to get fully going, especially in like December. It just feels like they could be doing a little bit more as far as coverage and as far as number of trails they're opening. As far as the lodges, I would say Gore does okay. Um, there's nothing extravagant about any of them. First off, they have the main lodge, which has a cafeteria style restaurant, tons of seating, it's 2 levels, and they also have a bar slash grill, which is probably the only place at Gore Mountain where you can go and have a sit down meal. Um, they have decent food, but it's all pretty basic. They also have a retail shop, and like I said, tons of seating downstairs. You can hang out there, put your stuff down, whatever. They also have the Northwoods Lodge, which is also at the main base area, just like the main lodges. Over there, there's the ski rentals, the tuning shop, and I believe the ski school and some offices. They have the Saddle Lodge, which is at the top of the Adirondack Express 2, and also at the top of the North Quad. It's kind of a mid-mountain lodge where they have a full menu of food. It's cafeteria style. They just added a second story last year, and it's renovated in there. It's pretty nice. There's also bathrooms and everything you expect from kind of full service mid-mountain lodge. There's also the Summit Lodge, which is kind of a glorified warming hut. Basically, it's the termination point of the old gondola from back in, I think they took it down in the 90s, but they still have some of the old gondola track in there, which is pretty cool, but basically all you're going to get is porta potty style restrooms and vending machines, but it's a good place to warm up if it's a snowy or cold day and you're hanging out up at the summit. The last lodge I have is the Ski Bowl Lodge, which is at the base of the ski bowl, and it's a good spot to go if it's a busy day and you want to get away from the crowds at the main base, or if you're into Nordic, that's where they have Nordic rentals, and that's where all the Nordic runs are. Also, they have a small restaurant with okay food. It's very basic, and it's just kind of like the main lodge on a smaller level for the ski bowl. So if you're going to Gore this year for the 2018-2019 season, this might actually be a good time to tune out, but if you're interested in what they plan on doing in the future, you might want to check this part out. So Gore Mountain is owned by the government of New York State, and thankfully the governor, Andrew Cuomo, has a big boner for this mountain and the Olympic Regional Development Authority. So there are extensive plans in the works for future expansion. I don't know if all this will happen next year, but I think some of it will definitely happen next year. I think probably one of the most exciting proposed expansions is the new lift at the ski bowl. They're going to put in a detachable quad, 4-person, and they're going to make 4 new trails. So these have actually all been approved, and I think it's one of the few projects at the mountain that has been approved. They're gonna make the lift go about 400 vertical feet higher, and they're gonna have a lot more and different ways to get down. So it's gonna be skiers left and about 400 feet higher compared to where the current triple fixed grip triple ends, and it looks like there's gonna be some pretty cool and steep runs, different ways down that will connect to the existing trail infrastructure. Over at the main mountain, it looks like the 2 newest lift additions will be a replacement of the High Peaks double chair, and it's not only a replacement, but it's also an expansion. So this lift is going to go a lot higher up the mountain, up to close to where the Summit Quad terminates and up where the new lodge at the summit is. There's also going to be a couple more trails over there. It looks like maybe one more glade, and it'll be a lot easier to access trails like the Rumor and Lies without having to traverse from the Summit Quad as you do now. The third lift that will probably be in development next year is a replacement for the Sunway chair, and it looks to be a triple or a quad fixed grip that will go to approximately the same place that the current Sunway chair goes, and this is just an update of a very old chair. So there are a couple proposed and approved trails that are not on any of the three lifts that I already talked about. So the approved trails are on Top Ridge. There's 2 new trails that are going to be built, skiers left of the lift, and these look really nice because up until now Top Ridge has mainly been a way to get back from the summit and back to Bear Mountain. Apart from a couple trails that are nice to session, it's been maybe only 3 trails you can ski down, and that would be a lift that I'd only ride a couple times in a day for this reason. So really looking forward to those. There's a couple of proposed trails on the Burnt Ridge Mountain, which would be nice to get a little more variety there because I think that lift suffers from some of the same things as Top Ridge. Even though the stuff that's there is really great, there's just not a ton of it. Also, there'll be some widening of the trails in the beginner section. There's been a new lodge approved for the top of Bear Mountain, which is interesting given the recent expansion of the saddle area. I'm not sure exactly why they choose to build this lodge at the top of Bear and not, for example, at the summit or Burnt Ridge, which pretty much lack lodges completely other than the warming cabin at the top of the summit. But I guess a lot of people get off the gondola and this would be a good spot to go in. I'm not sure exactly what kind of food they'll be offering, whatnot, but there'll be a new lodge at top of Bear Mountain at some point. Apart from these upgrades, there are some more far off upgrades that have been proposed. The most interesting one for me is a lift that would take you from the base of the ski bowl to the base of the main mountain. This would eliminate a lot of the traversing that you have to do to go from the ski bowl to the main mountain and back. So this would make it a lot more practical for people to park over at the ski bowl, spend some of the day on the main mountain, take the lift back, spend some of the day at the ski bowl. Additionally, there are going to be 2 new parking lots made and a new shuttle route. And I think that pretty much wraps up a lot of the proposed and approved improvements at Gore. Overall, I definitely think that Gore is awesome and you should check it out, especially if you're into glades, especially if you are south, and especially if you just like awesome big mountains with some steep stuff, some more moderate pitches, and a little bit of something for everyone. Disguised by broken branches.